Hi, I work a little bit more on my hobby project, and the first thing you'll see is that there's a couple of guards. I don't know if you can spot anything else, but there are shadows drawn on top of the characters. And something a little bit more subtle is the fact that there is lighting on the characters, dynamic. It's coming from, you can choose the directions. Like I'm trying to match what I have in the background art. So I'm making it sort of coming from the upper left. The shadows, I'm using a shadow map that I drew from the background. It's basically white and black. I can show it off. So the source that I've created is this. This is basically drawn from that background. So it's all white and black. And you can it's upside down like everything else. So, but you can see the sawtooth shape that's over there. It's kind of matching. And the way I do this, the way I actually create this and use this shadow is I render it to a texture. And this is the render result. Because it looks kind of similar, but as the character is moving around, which you can't see because it's behind this, the character is moving around, the camera is moving around, so the render to texture here changes. And the render to texture size is the same size as my render buffer. So I have it full screen as the game. This is sort of what you do for shadow maps in 3D applications, but there you actually render in the geometry to generate the shadows. Here I have a pre-drawn texture that I use for this. Another thing that I'm using, which is one of the characters. So the character texture as you've seen before. Now we also have a normal map. And this normal map was generated using a tool that I write about in the comments for this video or the description. It's a tool that can basically auto-generate based on the 2D and the transparency. So it's pretty basic. There are people have been doing this for a while where they want to get some depth on sprites. So you can actually generate a normal map that is the same thing a normal map would be in a 3D game. And also this is a material, so I might as well mention what I'm doing. Like the thing that I'm loading for the game is the texture that you have, the diffuse, that's the colors, the normal map, and then I have a depth map. The depth map is just one color for now. There are cases where I might actually want to do some trickery there, but I haven't. I don't need to do that yet. And then I bind that render texture here. So it's the same texture that's actually moving around. That's bound to the material for this, for the characters. I thought I was going to show the code again for the shader. So it's become a little bit more complicated again, which is kind of the point. I'll add things as I go. I don't want to have everything there right away. I'm kind of building as I'm going. So the diffuse we saw before, the depth we saw before, the normal texture and the shadow texture are new. And also here you can see the frag chord. That's the position of the pixel that's being rendered or fragment that's being rendered for OpenGL. I have the lighting is new as well. I'm sending, this is the direction of the light and this is the ambient color and the diffuse color. And I also have a value for the strength of the shadow that I want to use. I'm basically changing that in game so I can make the shadow stronger or not. I also have to use this conversion from the screen location to the texture location. The way I have it, I use the same viewport for the shadow as I do for the just the normal rendering. So I have to scale it back down, and I also have to add an offset because OpenGL is actually using position in the center of the pixel. So I'm basically changing that when you're sampling from a texture. So what am I doing? I'm getting the normal map value. I'm basically sampling that from the normal texture, and I have to map that to a value from 0 or -1 to 1. And then I can calculate the direction that the light is coming from versus this, so I can determine the strength of the light against that normal. So if it's bouncing, if it's completely in the same direction as the light, it's going to be very bright, and if it's bouncing away, the light is going to diffuse and get less bright. I also have it here, so I send in diffuse color in the material properties, and that kind of controls how strong this should be and what color it should be. I don't want to change the color yet, but this is a trick you can use if you want to kind of change the colors of characters. And also I have an attenuation factor. Attenuation is basically how the lights drops off over distance. Because I'm using a directional light, like a sunlight, it shouldn't actually drop off. It has the same kind of strength no matter what. Like the sun is far away and it doesn't really change no matter where you are. It's more a direction that changes. Normally you would have calculation drop off over linear or a quadratic, but I'm just using a fixed value here. And then I add the ambient color here so I can control how strong this thing is in the background. So the background, for example, that actually isn't using this. I'm not lighting the background. The background is just using ambience. It's just fully bright. And then, the shadow strength. The shadow is a little bit of a trick. So I have a shadow, but I'm not using the fragment texture coordinate anymore for this. I'm using the screen position here, which is the frag chord, and only the X and Y, because we said this depth, and depth is kind of irrelevant for us. So I'm using that to get the text coordinate to sample from the shadow texture. And I multiply that by the shadow strength because I want to see how strong it's going to be. Then I apply that. I apply the intensity, which was the lighting, and then I apply the shadow, which is just the shadow on top of this. And that's it. That's the additions. It's pretty clean. Like it's a bit of a trick. There are limitations with what I'm doing, but it's a kind of flexible way I can control the strength. And also because I have a shadow map here, I can actually also draw other things to the shadow maps, which is something that I'm interested in trying next, which is, you see the characters don't have shadows, and we want to fix that. That's like, I made a few efforts now to kind of make the game look grounded. Like the shadows, as you're moving into shadow, you see that you're actually there, and the lighting direction. I haven't flipped these sprites yet, I haven't created animations yet, but as you're flipping them, you also get a sense that they're in the world, and if they're moving around and the light is affecting what they're doing. That's kind of cool. So the next thing that I'm going to do is adding shadows to the characters. And I'm going to do it procedurally, I think. I don't think I want to draw this, so what I might do is just apply a matrix that transforms how these character sprites are rendered in this shadow buffer. I'm going to try that next. And also might try some gameplay, because I added these cards for a reason. And you'll see next what that is. Thanks, bye.